Topic: Voices under the floorboards. Part 1. The cry in the night. Word count, ~950. The first time Ava heard the crying, it was just past midnight. A chill had crept in through the old wooden window panes of her grandmother's Victorian house. The kind of house that had personality etched into its every creaking floorboard and whispering corridor. Ava sat up in bed, her heart thumping, trying to catch the sound again. There it was. A faint, muffled sobbing, coming from beneath her room. She froze, eyes scanning the darkened room. Her grandmother, Edith, was asleep in the room across the hall, and the only other occupant of the house was Buster, their aging golden retriever who barely made noise anymore. Ava slid out of bed, her bare feet touching the cold floor. For a moment, she hesitated. Maybe it was a dream, or the wind. This house made strange noises all the time. But then she heard it again, closer now. A childlike wail. It was unmistakable. She crouched and pressed her ear to the old wooden floor. "Help, please." The whisper was just above audible, threaded with pain. She jerked back, a gasp escaping her lips. Her first instinct was to wake her grandmother, but something instinctual and primal, stopped her. The house seemed to be holding its breath, as if listening. She grabbed the flashlight from her nightstand and crept toward the hallway. The stairs creaked under her weight as she descended to the ground floor, every step echoing louder than it should have. In the living room, she dropped to her knees and felt along the wooden boards, tapping lightly, listening for anything hollow. The voice had sounded like it came from under her room, which was just above the front parlor. Nothing. No loose boards. No signs of an opening. But just as she was about to give up and go back to bed, her light flickered across a strange outline in the floor near the far wall. A rectangle. Barely visible through the years of dust and polish. Ava's breath caught. She brushed the dust away. Her fingers traced the shape. A hatch. A trapdoor. Why would there be a trapdoor in a house like this? She whispered to herself. She had lived here for 3 months now and had never noticed it before. She tried pulling it up, but it wouldn't budge. There was no handle, just the faint groove of its outline. She'd need tools. Maybe a crowbar. Maybe. A sudden knock on the floorboards beneath her. She yelped and stumbled backward, her flashlight flying from her hand and skidding across the room. The knock came again. 2 knocks. Like a child asking to be let in. Then silence. Ava stood frozen in the dark, heart pounding in her chest. The flashlight beam rolled lazily across the ceiling as if the house itself was breathing around her. She didn't sleep that night. The crying never came again. But the trapdoor was still there. And in the morning, she would open it. Part 2. The Hidden Passage. Word count, ~1450. The morning light did little to calm Ava's nerves. She sat at the breakfast table with her grandmother, Edith, trying to focus on the buttered toast in front of her. But her mind remained in the parlor, on the faint cries in the night, and the invisible trapdoor no one had ever mentioned. "Did you sleep well, honey?" Edith asked, her voice sweet but distant, like she was always thinking of something else. Ava nodded slowly. "Yeah, mostly." Edith stirred her tea with a faint clinking of a spoon. "You've been waking up at odd hours lately. Is something bothering you?" Ava hesitated. "Have you ever heard sounds in this house at night? Like voices? Or crying?" Her grandmother paused. The clinking stopped. For a second, Ava thought she saw something flicker in Edith's expression. A flicker of recognition, or maybe fear, but it vanished just as quickly. "This house is old, darling. It creaks, settles, plays tricks on your ears, especially if you let your imagination run wild." Ava wanted to press further, to tell her about the trapdoor, but something in her grandmother's tone felt final. So she stayed quiet, nodding again and excusing herself after breakfast. By mid-morning, she was in the garage, rummaging through the old tools her grandfather had left behind. She found a rusted crowbar, some gloves, and a flashlight with fresh batteries. Buster watched her curiously from the doorway, his tail wagging just enough to make a sound, but he didn't step closer. When Ava returned to the parlor, she locked the front door, pulled the curtains closed, and dropped to her knees beside the trapdoor. Her fingers trembled as she fit the edge of the crowbar into the narrow groove. The wood groaned as she pushed. Once, twice. Then, with a reluctant creak, it popped open, revealing a dark void beneath. A damp, earthy smell wafted up from below, tinged with something metallic. The air was colder down there, like it belonged to a different world. Ava held her breath and aimed the flashlight downward. A narrow wooden staircase led into the dark, almost like it had been carved out of the bones of the house. She hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to stop. But the memory of that voice, so soft, so desperate, pulled her forward. She took the first step. It creaked. Then another. And another. The darkness swallowed her, inch by inch, until the last sliver of daylight disappeared behind the trapdoor above. She descended into a narrow corridor, barely wider than her shoulders, lined with old, cobweb-laced walls. Her flashlight beam revealed fragments of the past, an old tin toy, a torn blanket, and a rusted key hanging from a nail. The crying had stopped, but Ava felt like something was watching her. At the end of the corridor, the passage turned. She followed it carefully, her heartbeat echoing louder than her footsteps. That's when she saw it. A door. Not like the others in the house. This one was small, maybe 4 feet tall, made of iron, with strange engravings etched into its surface, symbols she didn't recognize. She reached out and tried the handle. Locked. She stepped back, shining the light around, when her eyes caught the glint of something metal on the wall. The key. The rusted key from earlier. She returned, pulled it from the nail, and fitted into the lock. It took effort, but the mechanism clicked. The door groaned as it opened. What lay beyond was a room, or at least what used to be a room. Stone walls, cracked and damp, surrounded her. Broken furniture lay in piles, and the remnants of blankets and clothing were strewn across the floor. There was a small bed against the far wall, with scratch marks carved into the frame. Ava's flashlight flickered, and then she heard it again, the sobbing. This time it was clearer, sharper. It echoed all around her, though she could see no one. The sound seemed to pour out of the walls themselves. Then the whisper came. "You found me." Ava spun around, the beam of her flashlight slicing through empty space. "Who's there?" she called out, heart racing. Silence. Then, movement in the corner of her eye. She turned quickly, only to see a small stuffed rabbit lying against the wall. Its fabric was old, ears torn, but something about it felt alive. She reached out to pick it up, but before her fingers could touch the toy, a sharp sound pierced the air. The trapdoor slammed shut above. She froze. Silence again. No footsteps. No voices. Just the suffocating quiet of a room sealed away for decades. Panic surged through her. She raced back down the corridor, climbing the steps 2 at a time. She reached the top and pushed, but the trapdoor wouldn't budge. "Hello. Hello," she shouted, banging her fists against it. No answer. Not from above. But from below, she heard footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Coming closer. She turned back, light shaking wildly in her hand. Someone was down there. Ava stumbled back down the stairs, ready to face whatever, or whoever, had followed her into this buried secret. And that's when she saw it. The walls of the passage, once dull and dirty, now had names scratched into them. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Some fresh, some faded. Each one carved like a silent scream. At the very end of the corridor, in jagged, uneven letters, was her own name. Ava. She backed away slowly, heart pounding in her ears. Then the voice whispered again, inches from her ear. "You belong here too." Part 3. The Forgotten Names. Word count, ~1800. Ava's breath came in ragged gasps as she stared at the corridor wall. Her name. It was there, carved in sharp, shaky lines at the end of a long list of others. "Who did this?" she whispered. She reached out, running her fingers across the letters. The cuts were deep. Recently made. Too recent. A chill slid down her spine. There had to be an explanation. Someone was playing a sick joke. Maybe even her grandmother. No, that was ridiculous. Edith could barely make it down the stairs, let alone crawl into a hidden cellar and carve names into stone walls. Still clutching the flashlight, Ava turned around and retraced her steps. She reached the small room again, the one with the broken bed and the stuffed rabbit. The crying had stopped. The silence was louder than ever. She shined her light into the corners, searching for something, anything, that could explain this place. That's when she noticed something beneath the bed. A wooden box. Small. Dusty. Untouched. She pulled it out and flipped the latch open. Inside were old photographs, black and white, their corners curling with age. Ava picked one up. It was a girl, maybe 10 years old, standing in front of the house. Her expression was blank, but her eyes were wide with something like fear. The back was labeled, Margaret, 1956. Ava sifted through the rest. All girls. All young. All photographed in front of the same house. All labeled with names and dates. Eleanor, 1963. Judith, 1971. Sophie, 1985. Rachel, 1992. And the last one, right at the bottom, had no date. Just a name. Ava. It was her. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. She was standing in front of the house, same as the others. But she didn't remember posing for it. Didn't remember it being taken. Her stomach twisted. "This isn't real," she whispered. A cold breeze brushed her cheek. She turned. The door was open. The same iron door she had unlocked earlier now stood wide again, though she had left it closed. Beyond it, the corridor stretched, longer than before. Too long. She stepped closer and realized the passage had changed. The walls were shifting, pulsing faintly like they were alive. She raised the flashlight and walked forward. The air grew colder. The walls narrowed, pressing in around her. Another name carved into the wall. Lydia, 1942. Then another, Clara, 1939. They were getting older, the names stretching back into a time even her grandmother had only lived in as a child. She paused at a cross-section in the corridor, two paths diverging. The left was narrow, with dripping water and a rust-colored pipe running along the wall. The right was cleaner, almost as if recently used. She chose the right. The hallway curved, then opened into a wider chamber. The flashlight flickered, and in that brief flash, she saw them. Figures. Dozens. Lining the walls, unmoving. She lifted the light again, only to find the room empty. Dust swirling in the beam. Her breath came faster now. She turned to leave, only to find the passage she came from had vanished. The walls were smooth stone. No, no, no. Ava spun in place, heart pounding. This isn't real. Then, footsteps. Behind her. Soft. Bare. She turned sharply. Nothing. Then a voice whispered, "Why didn't she tell you?" Ava backed into the center of the room. "Tell me what? Who are you?" Silence. Then, faintly, echoing through the room like a memory. She knew. She always knew. Ava closed her eyes, forcing her mind to think. Who knew? Grandma Edith? About the voices? About the trapdoor? About the photos? Suddenly, another sound cut through the silence. Not a whisper, not footsteps, but scratching from behind the wall. Then, as if something inside had waited long enough, the wall cracked. Ava stumbled back as a section of stone split open with a violent screech, revealing a narrow tunnel, and within it, something moved. Not quite human, not quite beast. A face, pale, hollow-eyed, and watching her. Ava bolted. She ran blindly, flashlight bobbing with every step. The corridors twisted and changed. She no longer knew which direction led to safety. Every wall looked the same. Every sound echoed wrong. But still, she ran, until finally, she saw it. The staircase, the same one she had descended from. She dashed up, slammed into the trapdoor, and pushed. It didn't move. She screamed, slamming her fists into the wood. "Let me out. Please." A shadow moved behind her. She turned slowly. The pale figure was crawling toward her, limbs bent at wrong angles, skin flaking like old paint. But its mouth was open in a smile. And it spoke, not aloud, but in her head. "You were always meant to be here, Ava. You were chosen, just like the others." She tried again. Pushed. Kicked. The trapdoor still wouldn't move. Then, suddenly, it flung open above her. Light. Warm light. Ava scrambled up, clawing her way out of the darkness. She emerged into the parlor, the morning sun spilling across the floorboards. Her lungs burned with relief. She turned to slam the trapdoor shut, and it vanished. Gone. No groove. No outline. Just seamless, dusty wood. The basement was gone. Just like it had never existed. Later that day, Ava sat on the front porch, still trembling. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking, no matter how tightly she gripped her tea. Edith sat beside her, quiet. "You found it, didn't you?" her grandmother said softly. Ava looked at her. "You knew?" Edith didn't meet her eyes. "I heard it too. When I was your age. Heard the voices. Saw the trapdoor. But I was too afraid to open it." Ava's voice cracked. "Then what is it? What's down there?" Edith sighed. "Something old. Something buried. This house was built over a girls' orphanage, burned down in the 1920s. They said it was an accident. But people whispered about other things. About girls who went missing before the fire. About cries in the night. My mother never let me talk about it." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because once you hear them, once you open it, it doesn't let go." Ava stared at her. "There were photos," she whispered. "Photos of girls. Of me." Edith nodded slowly. "Then it's begun again." "What has?" Her grandmother's voice lowered to a trembling whisper. "The taking. Part 4. The house remembers. Word count. 2400. Ava didn't sleep that night. Even with the trapdoor gone, she couldn't stop hearing it, the faint crying echoing beneath the floor. The sound didn't grow louder. It just stayed. Consistent. Unrelenting. A weeping that never stopped. She lay in bed, her heart racing at every creak of the house. When morning came, it felt like the light was an illusion, as if the house let it in only to pretend things were normal. She made coffee with trembling hands and stared out the kitchen window. The garden was still wild, untouched, but in the center of it now, something stuck out of the ground. She stepped outside, barefoot, walking across dewy grass toward it. It was another doll, old, cracked porcelain, half buried in the dirt, its glass eyes looking up at her. She didn't remember it being there yesterday. She crouched, touched it gently. Its dress was charred at the bottom, blackened with soot. Suddenly, a vision flashed through her mind, not a memory, but something older. Girls running through fire, screaming, smoke thick in the air, a bell ringing from a tower, and behind them, a shadow, tall and twisted, watching them burn. Ava stumbled back, gasping. Her hand throbbed where she touched the doll. When she looked down, a small cut had opened in her palm, a single line of blood trickling out like the edge of a symbol. A circle with lines crossing through it. She didn't understand it, but the house did. Back inside, Ava pulled out the wooden box she had taken from the hidden room. The photos were still there. Girls. Names. Her own face. One photo had stuck to the back of another. She peeled it away carefully. It was older. Different. The photo showed the house in its early years, boarded windows, ash-coated ground. The original structure of the orphanage, before the renovations. But in the corner of the photo, barely visible, stood a tall man in a coat. His face was indistinct, but there was something inhuman about it. The way he stood. His hands too long. The head slightly tilted like he was listening. Behind him, a group of girls stood in a line, heads bowed. Each one had a number stitched into her collar. Each one looked hollow. And in the front of the line was a girl with Ava's face. Not just similar, it was her. Same jawline. Same shape. Same wide, frightened eyes. But the photo was dated, 1919. That's not possible, she whispered. She rushed upstairs to Edith's room. Her grandmother was sitting by the window, crocheting in silence. But when Ava held up the photo, Edith's hands froze. Tell me who this is, Ava demanded. Tell me what's happening to me. Edith looked at the photo for a long time, then slowly whispered, You're not the first Ava. Ava blinked. What? In our bloodline, Edith said. There have been others. Daughters. Girls. All named Ava. All of them drawn to this house. That doesn't make any sense. Your mother was one, Edith continued, eyes fixed on the window. She disappeared here when you were just a baby. I told the police she left, that she never came back. But the truth is, she closed her eyes, voice shaking. The house took her. Ava's heart dropped. You think the house killed her? No, Edith said. It kept her. The next few hours passed in a haze of shock and confusion. Ava dug into every box, every old drawer, every hidden corner of the attic. She found journals, letters, old property documents. Slowly, a picture emerged. The house had been built in 1897 over the ruins of a church, then converted into an orphanage. There had been 34 missing girls between 1900 and 1923. The records were vague, some pages blacked out entirely, others torn or burned. But one name appeared over and over again, Father Silas Hargrove. He had been the caretaker, a man of God on paper, but the letters written by former staff hinted at something darker. Whispers of rituals, of quiet hours where girls were locked in the cellar and made to listen. Some staff claimed he believed the building was alive, that the voices under the floorboards were angels speaking through the earth, and only the purest children could hear them. Ava stared at a final, crumbling page from a surviving journal. He says they must be taken beneath, that the foundation must be fed to keep the walls from cracking. He says the house remembers every name, and if it forgets, it starves. I hear them now. They whisper to me in the night. I must leave before I become one of them. The entry was signed, Margaret. 1956. The same name from the photo. The same name carved into the wall. Ava's legs gave out. She sat on the attic floor, holding the journal against her chest. Something moved in the shadows behind the beams. She looked up. The doll from the garden was sitting near the attic door. She hadn't brought it there. That night, Ava didn't try to sleep. She sat on the floor of the living room, staring at the spot where the trapdoor had been. If you want me, she whispered, come get me. The silence stretched. Then, ever so slowly, the air shifted. The wood darkened at the edges. A faint seam appeared, and with a groan like an old breath, the trapdoor returned. She didn't hesitate. She opened it and descended. This time, the corridors didn't shift. They welcomed her. The path opened easily, the walls humming with low voices. She walked past the carved names again. Margaret, Eleanor, Rachel, Ava, and then, new names appeared beneath hers. Names that hadn't been there before. Edith, Eliza, her mother's name. The corridor opened into the large chamber again, but it had changed. The room now resembled a chapel, pews made of stone, a pulpit at the far end. Candles flickered in sconces, and above the pulpit, a massive mural had been revealed. Painted in deep, blood-red pigment, it showed a man, tall, robed, holding a girl over a pit of fire, surrounded by watching shadows with empty faces. At the bottom of the mural, in Latin, were the words, Domus memorat, sanguis clamat. The house remembers. The blood calls. Ava stepped forward. Something shifted behind the pulpit. She approached. Behind it was a narrow stairwell, spiraling downward. She descended. The further she went, the colder it got. The air was damp. The stone walls wept with condensation. And then, the crying returned. Louder, raw, childlike. She reached a metal door at the bottom. It was rusted but still solid. She pushed it open. Inside, she found a small stone chamber. A crib sat in the center. Around it, bones, dolls, ribbons, and on the wall, scrawled in black ash, was a message. She must become memory. Ava stepped toward the crib. Inside it was not a child. It was a collection of old teeth, locks of hair, and the locket she thought she had lost as a child. Her mother's locket. The one she had buried with her. A voice behind her whispered, "You brought her back." Ava turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was her mother. Or something wearing her mother's shape. Pale skin, hollow eyes, lips sewn shut. But the voice came anyway, directly into Ava's mind. "Take my place," it whispered, "so I may go." "What are you?" "I am what's left," the voice replied, "of those who were taken. But you are blood. You are anchor. The house has your name. It remembers you." Ava backed away, tears in her eyes. "I don't understand what it wants from me." Part 5. When the House Forgets. Word count, 2,800. A week passed. The house had gone quiet. No whispers. No crying. No flickering shadows at the corner of her vision. No names rearranging themselves on the walls. It was as if the thing beneath it had died. Or maybe, Ava thought, it had been forced to forget. She stood in the garden, morning sun on her face, staring at the spot where the trapdoor used to open. The grass was growing again, slowly reclaiming the space. In her hand, she held the old photograph, the one from 1919, showing the orphanage and the line of girls. She had studied the picture every day since. And no matter how many times she looked, it still showed her face. Not a relative. Not a resemblance. Her. It haunted her more than the voices ever had. Edith sat on the porch now, a shawl draped over her shoulders. She had been lucid since the incident, or close to it. Sometimes she murmured to herself, but the haze in her eyes had cleared. She watched Ava constantly, as if afraid she might vanish. "I saw her," Ava said without turning. "My mother, or whatever was left of her." Edith's fingers tightened around her tea. "She asked me to stay," Ava continued, "to take her place. And you didn't." Ava turned. "Would you have let me?" Edith's face was unreadable. "I don't know." A long silence passed between them. The breeze whispered through the trees, soft and harmless. Ava finally asked, "Why didn't you tell me everything? About the orphanage? About Silas? About all of it?" Edith looked down at her hands. "Because the house only tells you what it wants you to know. Speaking its truth out loud feeds it, gives it strength." "So what changed?" Edith's eyes met hers. "You did." The town had long forgotten the orphanage history. Ava tried digging through public records, church archives, and local newspapers. Most files before 1950 were either missing, fire-damaged, or marked confidential. But some pieces still remained. A letter from a local priest warning about ritualistic practices on consecrated ground. A hand-drawn map showing tunnels beneath the original structure, many of which matched the ones Ava had seen. And a missing persons report from 1987, filed by a woman named Eliza, Ava's mother. In the report, Eliza had written, "There is something in the floor. I hear it calling her name. My daughter is not just mine. The house wants her. But I won't let it." The report was closed. Never investigated. Ava sat in the public library reading it, feeling the weight of generations on her shoulders. The house wanted memory, legacy, stories that hurt and refused to heal. And her family had been feeding it, unknowingly, for over a century. Until now. Back home, Ava began clearing the attic. She opened every old box, burned the journals that described the rituals, took down the photographs that held too many eyes. But one item remained, the wooden music box, the one that played by itself. She almost threw it away, then paused. Instead, she wound it one last time. It began to play, soft, delicate chimes echoing through the quiet house. But this time, the melody changed halfway through. It slowed, shifted key, and played a lullaby Ava hadn't heard since she was a child. Her mother used to hum it, always at night, when Ava cried as a baby. Ava felt tears prick her eyes. It was a message, a memory untouched by the house, one that belonged only to them. She held the box close and whispered, "I remember you." And for a moment, the air grew warmer. Later that week, the sheriff paid a visit. Not about the house, about the bones. Some hikers had found skeletal remains in the woods just beyond the edge of the property, in shallow graves. Dozens of them. Children. Ava knew exactly who they were. The forgotten girls. The ones taken beneath. DNA testing would take time. There were no dental records. No matches. But now the truth couldn't be buried again. When the sheriff asked if she knew anything about the history of the land, Ava looked him in the eyes and said, "Yes, but you won't believe it." He didn't. But he left the file open. A month passed. Then two. The house remained still. Sometimes Ava swore she could feel it breathing beneath her feet, a ghost of a heartbeat. But it never spoke again. Not since she carved Silas Hargrove's name into the wall. The house hadn't wanted him remembered. It fed on innocent memory, pain, unfairness, not guilt, not confession. And by forcing it to remember him, she had poisoned the well. She walked through the rooms now freely, opened the drawers, ran her fingers across the banisters. And everywhere she went, she left behind her own stories, her own version, not the one the house had written for her. She repainted the nursery, planted wildflowers over the trapdoor, hung new pictures in the halls, of herself, laughing, Edith smiling, her mother as a child. No ghosts, no shadows, only living memory. On the final day of summer, Ava found a letter tucked behind a loose floorboard. It was addressed to her. The handwriting was delicate, almost familiar. She unfolded it and read, "My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means you heard them. I prayed you never would. But if the house let you in, it's because you're the only one who can make it forget. I tried. God knows I did. But it wouldn't let go of me. Don't stay too long. Don't become what I became. Your life is more than its history. Your story is yours now. I love you. Always. Mom." Ava folded the letter and held it against her chest. For the first time, she let herself cry. Not out of fear or grief, but release. 3 years later, the house was no longer Ava's. She had sold it to a preservation society that planned to convert it into a museum about forgotten orphanages and historical injustices. She had left them all the documentation, the photographs, the evidence, not the supernatural parts. Those were hers to carry. But the truth, the real, hard, human truth. She moved to a small coastal town and opened a bookstore. Named it the Hollow Room, after the secret space where everything began. Sometimes, people came in and asked if she believed in ghosts. She always smiled and said, "I believe in memory." That's scarier. Edith passed peacefully 6 months after they left the house. She died with Ava holding her hand, whispering a lullaby. The same one from the music box. And sometimes, just sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind rustled the trees outside her apartment window, Ava would hear the faintest sound. Not crying. Not whispers. But laughter. Children's laughter. Like echoes from a playground long buried. And she knew then. The house had finally forgotten. But the girls hadn't. They were free. And they were remembering each other now. Not in pain, but in peace. The end.